the Y3 Taureau and the Cabernet are our most sought after wines, our most popular wines. The first one, the Y3 Taureau Red Blend, it is an extreme value for Napa Valley. This wine, I'm not sure what it sells for in your store, but generally kind of that $25 range. And in Napa Valley, to get a $25 wine, it's either going to be what we had talked about, either big tank of second fresh or second tier grapes. Because I don't have a salesperson, I don't have regional salespeople, I don't have all the salaries that go into a big winery. I keep my price at this, and it's always been the same price for 10 years. The grapes keep going up in price, but we've been consistent with this because it's kind of a door opener for us. It is it's a very fruit forward, lush wine. Our whole idea was to create something that you can drink a little bit more on an everyday basis, something that doesn't break the bank. This was our second red wine that we ever produced, and it was all over the board. The blend was kind of Cab Franc, it was Merlot Cab Franc, it was Vin Cab, all over the place. And since I took over in the 2012, 2000 vintage, I said, you know what, throw the playbook away. Let's look at this, and what do we want to create? We want to create a wine that you can drink on an everyday basis. It's not going to break the bank. It can go with a burger, pizza, a filet, a ribeye, whatever you want it to go with. This should hit all the marks. This blend is 50% Merlot, 40 Cabernet Sauvignon, and 10% Syrah. We bring these grapes in separately. We never know what the exact blend is going to be until about a month or two before. We're working with these wines for almost 2 years before we get that final blend. And sometimes the Merlot will stick out a little bit more than the Cabernet. Maybe it's a little more, it's actually a much warmer site, or much warmer during the day and hotter at night site than our Cabernet. And the Syrah, from time to time, you got to deal with what Mother Nature gives you. So we don't put the blend on the bottle at all, because I'm basically wanting you to buy into the style. And if it changes 5% of this or 5% of that, it's still going to be consistent with the previous vintage. It's all Napa Valley fruit, 100%. So it's not 85 and 15% Sonoma. So it's a really fun wine. This wine, I actually had this wine in my glass, is meant to be, like I said, the Merlot is meant to be kind of that nice red fruit. You get that strawberry, you get that brightness. Mm-hmm. Cabernet will give you that black blueberry fruit. So think blackberry, blueberry pie. And then that Syrah really is nice, kind of a backbone structure. And just a hint of that Syrah, kind of 8 to 10%, really takes it up a notch. And it makes it a little more lively of a blend. We produce about 4,000 cases of this, and it's meant to be kind of a restaurant by the glass pour, or something you can take to a party. I always suggest the retailers, whenever someone comes in and they say, oh, I'm looking for, whether they say Merlot, Cab, or Syrah, hand them a bottle of this and send them to the party, because you don't know what other people like. This seems to check the most boxes and not break the bank.
Yeah, no, and I think sometimes with some blends, you can kind of get a little lost or might feel a little flat, but I think just like you described, each one of these grapes does add a little component to it. Like I'm getting maybe a little bit of pepper in there that you might not find without the Syrah, maybe a little olivey kind of component even too. I mean, especially we're selling this for $19.99 at our stores, and it's a really complex wine for that price. I mean, this is bang for your buck type of wine.
Year in and year out, this gets 90 to 93 points, Parker or Wine Enthusiast. In the 13 vintage, it scored 92 points, and I think it's the only wine that Parker has ever given 92 points at this price point from Napa still to this day. I mean, I challenge people all the time, like, drive up and down Silverado Trail or Highway 29 and find me a $20 wine, first of all. And then find me a $20 wine that's 90 points. You're not going to find it.
Yeah.
It's impossible. We don't have a brick and mortar up there. We have a vineyard, and we make the wines at Van Gee. And then we have a brick and mortar here that I share with my partners in their other business. So we can keep our overhead down. We can keep our costs at $19.99 retail and have fun with the wine. And like I said, it's definitely a door opener into our brand.
Yeah. So we do have a question from Chase about blends, and you mentioned how this can change year over year as long as it sort of continues with sort of the general, vibe of the wine, if you will.
Right.
But in terms of maybe like the sites, for example, like Merlot from Rutherford or Cab from Calistoga, I mean, I know that involves a lot of different factors, but might you sort of change the blend depending upon weather in those sites? And this is almost a question about Bordeaux, but maybe out of Rutherford, is there more clay, or is there maybe more gravelly limestone out of Calistoga, or how do you maybe even choose those sites to plant those grapes in the first place?
Sure. So with these grapes, we're mostly buying the fruit. So the Cabernet does come, or the, hold on a second. Okay, yeah, it does. I had a block over the slide. The Cabernet comes from us, so we completely control the style of what we're doing there, and it always will. The Merlot comes from Rutherford, and we've been using the same vineyard for many years. If the vineyard sells, maybe we have to go somewhere else. Maybe maybe the vineyards are getting older. You might have to change because they're going to replant. The same with any of the varietals. So sometimes you are looking kind of at the health of the vineyard, how long it's going to be around. So there's one thing is you might not, the grapes might just no longer be there because they replanted with Cabernet on a Merlot site. It's kind of up to the grower that we're working with, and hopefully we have a great relationship with them and we can continue to produce year after year. If not, say for instance, Atlas Peak, this was Stagecoach Vineyard. It got sold to Gallo. So Gallo has now taken back contracts year after year. They get smaller and smaller. And for instance, this year in 2020, they got hit by the fire. So if I was still buying from them, I would have to then figure out where else can I get Syrah, and let's kind of figure that out. We want to make this blend year and year consistently, but we want to make it a better wine. So we're always looking to be like, okay, well, this year the Syrah was a little bit riper. So when we go to blend, we might only want to blend 5% into instead of 10% because it's gonna overcome the Cabernet. And so, for instance, the previous blend of this was 50% Merlot, 30 Cab, and 20 Syrah. And that's exactly what we did. Was we changed it because when we got to the finish line and we started tasting that Syrah, the Syrah just poked its head out, and it would create a different flavor profile. All blends, I wouldn't say they're experimental. We're definitely going for a specific idea and flavor profile. Some of the bigger brands may be more experimental, but we figured out from the beginning when they produced it from 2008 to 2012, that was, I would say, very experimental. It was, let's throw this at the wall and see what it tastes like, and I hope it's good. But now that since 2012, we figured out that this is a restaurant wine. This is something that people are going to pour by the glass. It has to be consistent year in and year out. And so we went to the program of starting with Merlot, Cabernet, Syrah. In the next vintage, 2018, it is actually 50% Cabernet, 45 Merlot, and 5 Petit Verdot. And again, we no longer have the contract with Stagecoach, but we figured out a way to make the same consistent style using a little bit different, with adding a little bit more Cabernet. We'll take off from the Syrah and adding the Petit Verdot will give you that kind of that black fruit characteristic that the Syrah was giving us. So even experimenting with different grape varietals can still give us the same goal of making the same specific style. And that's, again, was one of the reasons why we don't put it on the label. We don't want to shock people with the minor changes that we do put on them.
Yeah. Yeah, and in a way, it might even add some more consistency because you can account for those, weather changes and longer term, climatic changes, and so it almost the way in which blends change, and this is true in Bordeaux as well, that they almost ensure consistency, and that's what producers are after. So, Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And in Bordeaux, you never see the grapes listed on any of those Bordeaux
Yeah.
at all. It's not how, in Bordeaux or in France, they're creating a house style. So whether they had 78% Cabernet in that, and next year it's 85% or 90% Cabernet, it's the same wine. It's their house style. So whether it's Latour or any of the First Growths or anybody out there, if you look at a Bordeaux, it's not going to say the grape varietal is broken down on it. And it's a very American thing to have that on there, 100%.